Stephen, I want each straw from your team for the third time in a row they've bagged back after being behind. You must feel your team deserve it in the end.
Well, I think we did, and probably in chances created, particularly at the start of the second half. Dunfermline will probably feel that they could have put the game to bed, and rightly so. They had chances to go and win the game, but I just thought the way we stuck at it. I think with regards being, pleasing on the eye and how we're trying to play, style of play, getting on the ball and trying to make passes on a tough surface. It's very dry and very sticky. Slowed the play up a little bit at times. I just thought they were excellent. They're a group of young men who just keep going, and I said that to Keith Lasley during the game. I says the one thing you get from them is they keep plugging away. They keep going, they keep believing something's going to come for them, and eventually it did. Is it well deserved? Well, I think it is on general play. Probably in chances created, they edged it, but just from application and for the information we give them and how we train and how we want to try and play, I think for that alone, they deserve the draw.
And it's also worthwhile noting as well that Dunfermline were considerably more experienced than you in almost all areas of the park. Yeah, I think I counted 4 or 5 first years on the starting lineup. That must be particularly pleasing as well, that these young guys are coming through and actually making a name for themselves and not looking out of place at this level.
No, that's the nice bit. We had 2 16-year-olds starting, David Turnbull and Jake Hasty, and we had Dylan Fulton coming off the bench at 16 and affecting the game. Not just being 16-year-olds who are filling jerseys and hoping to get a touch on the ball, actually going and affecting the game. So, that was the pleasing part. Listen, there were so many good performances. The Antoine Courier, who I've played against in my career, and he's a physical player. He's tough. He asks questions off you. When the ball goes wide, you've got to pick him up. You're running behind. And I thought young Barry Maguire, who's 17, again's only been in a few weeks, and Ben Hall, cope with him admirably. And I said to Ben today, it's a big test of how far we think you can go today, up against a first team player who's probably scored 8 or 9 goals in the Scottish Premiership last season, in the first half of the season. Can you go and compete? Can you go and go body to body and really make a nuisance of yourself and be difficult to play against? And I thought he did. So, so many pleasing things. Jack McMillan again keeps getting better and better. Alan Campbell was terrific in midfield. His ball winning skills, his ability on the ball, his appetite to go and play in the game. Keith did say that, Keith Lasley said just as he walks by behind me, he said, don't just go into games and hope you get through them. Go and make an impact and go and try and stake a claim for the first team. Alan Campbell played today like he wants to get into our first team. Yeah. And the more players we can get like that, the more players we get into the first team.
There was an incident quite early on in the game where Craigan, who came off at half time, looked to be brought down the box. Replays on MFC TV later tonight will probably show it should have been a penalty. Were you disappointed not to get that?
I think that's an understatement. If you get caught wrong side as a defender in the box, and the minute you make contact with the player without touching the ball, then it has to be a penalty. And to be fair to the referee, I don't know if I should be saying this, but he came and spoke to me at the start of the game and said he refereed our Aberdeen game. And he said he got the Kieran Kennedy decision wrong. He shouldn't have sent Kieran off, and it should have been a corner kick as opposed to a penalty kick. And I then said to him after the game, I'm guessing when we have you in a couple of weeks' time, you'll be coming and apologising again, because I think that should have been a penalty kick. And he said, I don't think so. And I said, well, you told me that the last time. So without getting into a little bit of depth, absolutely a stonewall penalty at a crucial time in the game. For the kids, not for me, it doesn't affect my life whether we win or lose the game, but for the kids who are putting so much into it, at 0-0, that gives us a great chance to take the lead and then stamp our authority more in the game. So that's a decision I'm disappointed with. However, if the referee's honest enough to hold his hand up, we just deal with it and move on.
And Dunfermline's goal, from their point of view, they'll say it was well worked. There was a good passing move from them and a good finish too. Any complaints from your side from a defensive point of view?
Well, actually in the lead up to it, we give the ball away twice in midfield before it, under no pressure. And that was probably the little thing that concerned me throughout the afternoon. But we'd done so well up to a certain point of the pitch. Up to the final third, we'd done okay. In the final third, it was probably just our final ball, our final pass, our final cross of, I said at half-time, composure. When you get in the final third, compose yourself. Sometimes you may have to take an extra touch. Sometimes you may have to play an extra pass. Whereas I think they were getting a wee bit uptight. They seen the space, they seen the gap, and they were trying to force passes, they were trying to force crosses. So that probably happened in the build-up to the goal. We had the ball twice in midfield and we gave it away unnecessarily. They then went and punished us. So I'll have to look back at the goal. But certainly there's a lot to move on for. We have the Scottish Cup tie on Sunday against Partick Thistle at home. That gives me great hope. Just because we'd so many young players playing today who went and performed and have now put me under a little bit of pressure to go and pick a side.
And you mentioned composure in the final third. Your equaliser came in the 89th minute, and it was all about composure, wasn't it? Really, it was a ricocheted ball into the box. Ryan Waters takes a nice touch and finishes it with aplomb. You'll be pleased he's got his name on the score sheet again.
The one thing about Ryan is, irrespective of what kind of game he's having, I'm not saying he was poor today, but irrespective of what kind of game he's having, he always gets a chance. The ball always ricochets to him, as you say, or bobbles to him, because he puts himself in the position. But the game probably summed up where we were in the final third. We had 2 mishit shots, yet the ball ends up landing at one of our players' feet. So as much as I'm pleased about it, at times you just think final third, compose, settle yourself, just play that extra little bit of pass. It'll come through experience, it'll come through playing games, it'll come through continually giving the ball away in that area. Then they'll start to learn from it, as well as our video analysis, as well as our training. But when the ball dropped Iran, my first thought was goal. I just knew he was going to score it. I said to him a couple of weeks ago against Rangers, he had a tough second half, but I always keep him on because I think the ball's going to drop to him in the box, and it did. So the boys were buzzing. They actually chased the ball looking for a winner. So credit to them.
Stephen, well done.
Thank you.